and Vincent McAviney is now in front of Westminster joining us. Vincent, what is the mood like after last night's drama?
Good evening, Tessa. Well, it's much quieter here this evening. There aren't MPs running around all over the place trying to brief and to spin. That is because they've gone back to their constituencies this evening. But they were battling it out on the airwaves late last night and early this morning. Both her supporters and opponents trying to claim this as a victory for the Prime Minister or for the Brexiteer side. Let's have a listen to what some of them were saying.
I think the Prime Minister should resign. She cannot get her deal through. Her very bad, unsatisfactory withdrawal agreement, which is not supported by the DUP, by many Conservatives or by the opposition. And having failed in her main plank of policy, it would be constitutionally normal for her to retire from the fray.
This was absolute frustration yesterday that the government was simply not listening, lecturing people, not thinking. This is a major issue. Sort this out. You get your governing partners, the DUP, back on board, and you get your party back on board. And no one is keener than me to see that happen. But it has to be serious, and it has to be binding, and it has to be quite clear that the EU now has a decision to make, not us. They do. If you want a deal, you better damn well step up to the plate.
She's got the support of the party behind her, and I wish her every success today in making sure that she delivers on the questions that some of my colleagues have had about the backstop. Thank you.
Well, we heard there from one of the heads of the ERG group, Jacob Rees-Mogg, and a former Conservative leader, Ian Duncan-Smith, who himself faced a vote of confidence back in 2003 and lost his party's leadership. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg in particular has been coming in for a lot of stick today because he was even calling on the Prime Minister to go to the Queen and resign. But many people saying she won 63%. Why would she do that? John Major, back in 1995, when he had the same leadership challenge, won by 65% and stayed on and fought another election. So we don't really know what precedent he was talking about the sort of paid-up members of the government versus the backbenchers. He's being mocked, though, because a lot of people are saying, well, on 52%, you're saying that the UK needs the hardest form of Brexit, so why isn't 63% good enough? It is, of course, a battle of spin, and we heard from Amber Rudd there on the Prime Minister's team saying it's good enough to carry on in these strange times that we're living in. And for the Prime Minister, she will have been relieved last night, but it was a damaging blow to her. It has bought her, though, this safety net of a year until her party can once again challenge her again. And in British politics, it's not quite as smooth as in German politics, where Angela Merkel has set out this longer timetable and it seems to be running smoothly with transitioning. British politics, we've seen when Tony Blair said he was going to go, well, that just simply started a countdown clock for Gordon Brown's team to try to remove him from Downing Street. The Prime Minister has this window. She's in Brussels tonight, of course, trying to get some kind of legal text to define more clearly what it is the backstop will be in place for and how long it will go on for. She'll then come back and he'll have Parliament going on vacation next Thursday for 2 weeks. She'll be frantically trying to work out over the Christmas holidays what it is she can do to get that vote past the House of Commons, because she has to have that vote by the 21st of January. And at the moment on the maths, it's still looking incredibly difficult for her.
Thank you for that, Vincent McAviney in London. Their battle of spin, that's one way of putting it. Well, among the many Brits in Brussels today was the leader of the UK Liberal Democrats, Sir Vince Cable. And I caught up with him after his meeting with his fellow Liberal leaders here in the EU and began by asking him for his response to Theresa May's political survival.
Well, she's survived, but she's weaker because it's advertised the fact that there are now over 100 of her own MPs who are totally against her and will vote against her agreement in Parliament. She's had to concede that she will not contest the next general election. She's in a much weaker position, I'm afraid. And the basic reality that she cannot get her Brexit deal through Parliament is now more obvious than ever.
So you think she's in a weaker position, but she is here in Brussels trying to get those assurances that she said she would try to get to appease her MPs. What's the point of her being here? Do you think she can get those assurances?
Well, it's very clear that the European governments are not going to change the text of the treaty, the withdrawal agreement. That's fixed. It's been agreed. It can't be reopened whenever Theresa May feels like it. They may try to have some emollient language, something that helps her to sweeten it, but I can't see that the people in UK who are very hostile to the treaty, the people in Northern Ireland or her own backbenchers, they're not going to buy anything if it's not legally binding.
So this whole exercise of her being in Brussels is essentially pointless.
I think that's putting it a little harshly. I mean, she's doing her best to get an agreement that is acceptable to her own people. I don't think there's anything she can get here that's going to satisfy them.
All right, and you were here in Brussels because you talked to the Alliance for Liberals and Democrats group, and you wanted to inform them of the changing mood in the UK. What does that mean? What is that changing mood?
Yes, I was here to brief my Liberal friends in Europe. I mean, the mood is changing in the UK. There is a growing percentage of people who think that we need to have a referendum to resolve the issue with the choice of the government's deal or staying in the European Union. I think opinion is hardening. Growing numbers of MPs in all parties, Conservative, Labour, the smaller parties, the Nationalists, are all getting behind this. And I think the people in Europe do need to understand that Brexit is not a done deal. We may finish up staying.
So you are confident that MPs can possibly back the idea of a no Brexit?
I think no Brexit is a definite, realistic possibility. We haven't yet got the votes, but I think the momentum is in that direction. And I think people in Europe have really got to bear in mind that no Brexit may well be what comes out of all this.
And in terms of a people's vote, do you think that Theresa May remaining unchallenged for a year, is that going to affect the likelihood or unlikelihood of that vote?
Well, she has been implacably opposed, and her own supporters are implacably opposed because they're worried they might lose it and that we may finish up staying in the European Union. But she may have no choice. I mean, there may be a better chance of her winning a referendum than of trying to get something through Parliament that simply is stuck.
All right, well, with me in the studio to try and make sense of it all, we have former head of EU strategy at the UK Department of Energy, Matt Hind, and Director of Europe and Geopolitics at Friends of Europe, Shada Islam. All right, Shada, when I asked Vince Cable if Theresa May being here is pointless, you laughed. What do you think it's pointless?
I don't think it's pointless. I think she needs to be here. She needs to communicate with her counterparts. But it's Groundhog Day, isn't it? It's over and over the same thing. And I think the Europeans are getting very tired. I think Europe wants to help her, wants to give her some assurances. And I think they will tonight give some assurances on the backstop. But really, it is such a mess. And I think we're all waiting for this drama, this psychodrama, this civil war in the Tory party to be over. We've got so many other challenges to deal with here in Europe. And this is such a distraction, you know. So I hope that she can get things sorted at home, but it's really not our... I mean, you know, when someone says it's up to Europe to now come to the plate and deliver, seriously? No.
Those assurances, you said that Europe will give assurances, but probably not the assurance that she wants to take back home. So where does that leave us?
I mean, it's impossible to say because, I mean, we're talking about political assurances as a maximum, no change for the withdrawal agreement, and the fundamental issue is that the DUP are opposed to the backstop. So there's practically nothing that can happen there. And the other thing to take away from last night's vote is, OK, she won by 83 votes. That is quite substantial, but it actually just proves there are only 200 votes in the House of Commons that she can rely on for the agreement. 450 MPs are going to be opposed on those figures. So where does that go? I mean, they're going to take the next vote in late January, probably. You're in a situation where Parliament has to do something, and it's not clear how Parliament will do that.
Exactly. And, you know, Vince Cable floated the idea, well, he's been pushing the idea of a people's vote. And earlier we had a guest, Brian McGuire, who was saying that some people in the EU actually might not want to help Theresa May so that we end up with a no Brexit in the end. OK, which of these scenarios do you think is strategically possible?
I think there should be a second referendum. And I think if you were to ask many of the EU leaders, they would say a second referendum. The first referendum was based on misleading information, okay? Lies. And people voted on the basis of misleading information.
So you don't believe it will be a betrayal of the vote that was already had?
I don't think so. I don't think referenda are about democracy, really. I think, you know, this was a binary choice, yes or no. A very simple question was put to people. The nuances were not there. Now, the people in Britain know the details, know what's going to happen, know what they're going to lose. And I think on that basis, they should be allowed to change their minds.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I mean, I was just going to say, I mean, I think logically that would make sense, but I think you've got to look at what's happening to the polling in Britain. It has not shifted quickly. I mean, people are very stuck in the same position they were in 2016. Now, OK, there are certain things that may have changed. More young people, you know, certainly perhaps on the margins, more people regressing their Leave vote. But I think people are assuming a second referendum will go in a different direction. I think that's probably quite...
And would she dare or want to, because she can't be challenged for the next year, would she dare or want to do it?
I mean, she doesn't want to, obviously, and I think she feels she has to deliver Brexit. But the issue with the second referendum is when you go through everything else, she loses the meaningful vote. There's not a majority in the House for any other option, Norway Plus, for example. Eventually, you just get to the point where it's no deal or it's no Brexit. And the only way of getting to no Brexit is probably a referendum.
And what about what Leo Varadkar was saying, that possibly revoking Article 50?
I think she can do that too. I mean, all possibilities are open, and the European Court of Justice has said she could do that, right? So I think it really, seriously, I think a courageous leader, a bold leader at times like this would take the decision to have a second people's vote and get people to decide. I think that's the only courageous political leadership signal that she could send. And then she leaves her name in history as someone who dared. At the moment, she's, weakened, fragilized, bloodied, lame duck. I mean, really, seriously, I think she should do it. I mean, if I were in a position, I think I would take the chance. And I think things have changed, Matt. I really think the young people now realize, and the truth is out there, what they're going to lose. A no-deal Brexit, crash, a train crash.
I think it also depends on what poll you're looking at or what,
yes.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It does depend on the polls. And I think one of the issues is that a lot of the population of the UK just don't believe that a no-deal Brexit will be that bad. And it doesn't appear to matter how many pieces of evidence, how many business leaders say it, how many times you point out that there are consequences for leaving the single market and the customs union. It's not shifting opinion.
You think it's an emotional attachment that people might have to their opinion?
Someone said Brits don't like being told to vote again. And I think you can see, if it was take back control in the first referendum, the second one will be something like tell them again. And I think that's very risky.
But the world,
I'll give you the last
Tessa,
word,
the world
okay.
is watching, right? I mean, Britain has a reputation, a global reputation. It's a former imperial power. It was still, I would say it's a middle status country. It's not a great power, let's be very clear. But it still has a reputation. People look to Britain for democracy, for leadership. It has renown, okay? It has influence. It's losing it all. It's losing it all day by day by day. A crash of reputations. Is that what we want? No.